Hello, Graham from Arion Games here again. This is Advanced Fighting Fantasy, the beginning, part 2. So, I talked last week about publishing the original AFF rulebook, and at the same time I published Titan, I published Out of the Pit, classic, all-time classic bestiary, all-time classic world guide. And then the big question was, what do I publish next? So, for me, there was only ever really one choice. Crown of Kings. So the original Sorcery game books were a huge influence on my early gaming after Warlock of Firetop Mountain and the other classic early books. Here you had a campaign. Here you had 4 books strung together. You had an overarching story. You had apparently irrelevant points early on, such as the locket, that cropped up later and were vitally important. These were all really, really good campaign elements, and it is such an iconic campaign, so well remembered by Fighting Fantasy players, that I had to turn it into a campaign for AFF. Now, I have seen reviews over the years, and I do try and read the reviews, and a few of the reviews, a couple of reviews, have pointed out, oh, it's very linear. It follows the game books very, very closely. It doesn't provide outside information, it doesn't provide other options, and that was fully intentional. That was there to be a direct adaptation of the game books and nothing more. Of course, directors are more than welcome to expand it out, to add side quests, to add more information about the villages, the towns, the cities, and so on. But as a product, it was there purely to adapt the game books for AFF, and it sold very well. It is a classic campaign, and it should take quite a long time for players to run through, and it's perfectly suitable for brand new characters, brand new players to the game. It eases you into the campaign. Now, after that was Hero's Companion. The name arose because it began as the original idea was for it to be a guide for players with some new rules and so on. What it morphed into was the extra material from Alancia, plus lots and lots and lots of options for directors and for players. So we have in there rules for running your own business. Players can now invest their money in an inn and make profits from it. We have rules for new magic styles such as chaos magic, necromancy, summoning, enchanting, and so on. We have rules for running a domain for if the players end up being lords. We have rules for henchmen, and we have rules for random map generation. So very much like I use dropping dice on a piece of paper to generate a random dungeon, now you can drop dice on a piece of paper to generate a random outdoor map of any size. So I put that all together, and it's been a very, very popular seller, has that book. You don't need it. Okay, you don't need Hero's Companion. You can play a long campaign without ever needing any rule in there. But what it does do is it adds value to your campaign, it adds options, it adds new talents, it adds new special skills, it adds new magic, and so on. Now, following on from that, the only book of the original 3 that I had not adapted any material from was Black Sand. Black Sand, of course, is the iconic city found in City of Thieves, Port of Peril, and indeed several others. Seas of Blood, not Seas of Blood. Can't even think of the name of it now. Several more have it in. And the Black Sand book we produced, with Martin McKenna cover, has a few new rules at the start, a few pages. But the vast majority of it is setting. And what I did was took the original Black Sand setting information from the original Black Sand book and expanded it. There were plenty of taverns in there that were not mentioned. There were plenty of shops and businesses and so on that were never mentioned, never expanded upon, and I expanded that. Once I'd done that, I then padded all of that out, dropped in loads of plot hooks and so on, and put it together into that book. And the interesting thing about this one is, although it's written for Advanced Fighting Fantasy, the vast majority of it is setting, not rules. And so it would be very, very easy to use this with any other fantasy role-playing game. You could drop Black Sand in to any other game. Now, following that was the Sorcery Spellbook. Now, again, if you're from my generation, you will almost certainly have had an original copy of one of these. I've still got 3 fairly brittle and yellowing copies downstairs. And a lot of people contacted me to say that their players were using original Sorcery Spellbooks, 1980s copies, as an aide-memoire for their sorcerer character, to remind them of what spells they had. Because of course in the game, a sorcerer character has all 48 spells. And I thought, well, why not take the original John Blanche art, which is fantastic, take the original text and put it into a new version, a new volume, but include the rules from AFF 2nd edition in there. So a sorcerer character now at the table does not need to sit there with a copy of the rulebook. They can have a copy of this. It has every spell in, it has the spellcasting rules, all the modifiers, and if they want to cast sap, they can read the rules, tells them exactly what it does, how it works, number of stamina, etc. It's a great little play aid to have. And again, these have sold really, really well. Following on from that was the first AFF book I didn't write, Beyond the Pit. So this was written by Andrew Wright, who for many years had been doing write-ups of monsters on various Fighting Fantasy websites. And he approached me and said, look, you know, I've got information on another 250 monsters from the game books. We've got extant art out there we can use from original artists. So we did a Kickstarter and he wrote it, and it's been a fantastic seller. Another 250 purely fighting fantasy monsters, dripping with character. You don't find monsters like this in any other game. And at the moment, at the time I'm recording this, there is indeed a Let's Read of this on RPG.net. So that sold a huge number, and about the same time I was contacted by Brett Schofield, who said, I've got a conversion of Warlock Firetop Mountain. Can we publish it? And I thought, yeah, why not? Fantastic. Classic, another classic game book. So again, we used original art from, again, the superb Russ Nicholson, with a few extra pieces from Brett himself. And again, we published that, and that has been a great seller because it takes a classic game book and directly adapts it. That's the thing to remember about these adaptations. They are direct adaptations. If you want to add on extra side passages, extra rooms, extra monsters, feel free. It's easy to do. But if you want a direct adaptation, you could of course get a game book off your shelf. You could work your way through, you could make a map, you could work out the rooms, you could work out treasures. That's entirely possible. This, for a few pounds, will do the work for you. Cost you a couple of coffees probably, a couple of beers. And so this was pretty much phase 1 of my publishing plans. This is where I'd got up to in my head. So I'm not going to go any further into the next books now. I'll leave that for the next video in a few days' time. But by the time we got here, we had a good pile of books, plus of course the original 3, Out the Pit, Titan and Advanced Fighting Fantasy. And we were solidly building a library of books, of rules, of adventures, of monsters, of setting. So the world was being really developed. We had plenty of adventures for people to play in. My forums were really picking up. There's plenty of fan adventures on there. And it's really becoming a brand again, a coherent line. And that was important. Publishing one rulebook and then doing nothing with it doesn't really develop a brand. Developing multiple books, it becomes something you can really follow. And as I've already said, none of these other books are necessary. You could buy the core rulebook and play with that. But add everything else in and I think you get a better experience. Now obviously I would say that, because if you buy a book, I get a few pounds from it. But I really do truly believe that you add all of these together and you get a better fighting fantasy experience. So I'm going to leave it there. But in a few days' time I'll post another one where I talk about the next tranche of books, and then there'll probably need to be one more a few days after that on the most recent books. And of course we've still got the science fiction adaptation, the foreign translations and so on. But I will come to those in future videos. If you haven't already subscribed, please do subscribe, and then you can be informed when I release the latest videos. And please do leave comments or get in touch if there's anything you want to suggest or talk about. Thank you very much for your time, and enjoy Advanced Fighting Fantasy.